Welcome back to the Journey Podcast. I'm your co-host, Emma Jackson.
And I'm Jose. Emma, did you know the hardest thing to do in business in 2024 is to fundraise for your business?
Yeah, I had a pretty good idea because you can have an idea, you can even have a business plan, but if you don't have the funds, you're not going anywhere.
Nope. That's why in today's episode, we're going to talk about some hard truths.
All the things that we've learned in my 5 years, your 10 years of growing and scaling businesses. Because between the two of us, I think we've tried every trick in the book to secure funding for our business.
And at the end of this episode, Emma, I'm going to share with you my secret scheme to hack infinite funding for our startup.
Is it legal?
100% legal.
Okay, now I'm listening. No, but seriously, for anyone that stayed tuned, here's what we're going to talk about. All of the ways that you can possibly acquire funding for your business, the consequences of some of those ways, because everything has a price, right? And at the end, we'll talk about what we are doing for the details for how we're actually going to fund and scale our project that we're launching.
Yeah. For the record, it's not really a scheme. It's all fully legal.
But what are you doing? Please subscribe, like, and obviously we want you to comment on along. Tell us what you have done to grow your business. How have you secured financing for your business? And drop down a comment below.
Because we know 74% of you guys are not subscribed, so hit that subscribe button. This topic is so interesting to me, Jackson.
Okay.
Because the reality is my first time I fundraised, I was freaking out of my mind. I took over $120,000 in debt.
Okay, that's a lot. How old were you?
I think 25, 26.
Dang, that is heavy. I could not imagine having that much debt at such a young age.
No, and for me, it was credit card debt.
Okay, whoa.
I financed the barbershop pretty much off credit cards.
I mean, I guess I don't know any other 26-year-olds that just have $100,000 to their name. If you do, maybe hit me up because we could talk. But that feels like you probably didn't have another option.
I did have other options, but I went to the seminar about creative financing, and I knew enough of the game to like the timing game of credit cards, plus some peer-to-peer lending, to really float this for about a year and a half, and make sure that the business was afloat.
So you planned, okay, I'm guessing you put down, like, you did 0% interest for, like, 15 months.
Correct. Well, there were 12 months.
Okay, and then you were like, I think I can get my money back in a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just made the gamble on yourself.
Exactly. And then I had a peer-to-peer loan to kind of back me out to pay day-to-day operations. So to make sure I have enough money to make the payments, to make sure I had enough money to pay the rent, and the stuff that was actually cash demand on hand.
Dang, what did you learn from that?
I learned a lot. The sequencing, I learned a lot of the banking kind of laws, right? So I figured out the power of leverage. I figured out the power of structuring the deals according to peer-to-peer lending, and then how to actually put that in a bigger scale. Later on in my career, I learned a little bit more about pitching, and which kind of tied in perfectly with that.
Okay, so my first venture that I ever financed, a little bit different, a lot of a different scale, but I was also a teenager. So when I was in high school, I got accepted to this elite summer program, and I was so excited to go until I saw that it was like $6,000 for the summer.
For a summer program?
Yeah, and it was like 2 or 3 weeks.
What program was this?
Well, it was actually amazing. But it was amazing. But it was really expensive, and my parents weren't going to be able to afford that. But my dad was really smart, and he said, you know what you're going to do? He didn't say we can't afford it. He just said, I think it would be more valuable for you if you learn how to get the community to buy into your idea.
So your dad was already
get
prepping
community support. He said you need to put together a pitch proposal. You're going to have a value proposition because people aren't just going to invest in you to invest. What are you going to provide back to them? So my idea was, okay, well, I'm just a high school student, but I can bring this, this was a national program at Georgetown University. It was super elite and, whatever that means. And I was like, I can bring back knowledge and ideas to my hometown, maybe open the pathway for other kids from my public school to go to a program like this. And so I shopped my proposal around, and I was so surprised. I thought maybe I would raise like some of the money, but I raised all of the money for the program in just a few weeks, and
Really?
It opened my eyes to what was actually possible when you ask people, you put together a strong pitch deck, and you get people to believe in you.
Okay, let's say you have a budget, Emma, right? What's the first thing you're going to do to fundraise? Or how are you even going to start fundraising?
Ooh, Okay, so there are so many options. I'm glad you brought up creative financing because there are so many options available. I'm just going to list out a whole bunch of them and we can just talk
I wonder,
through
wait,
a few
did you
of
break them
them.
down like good categories, bad categories?
No, because the thing is, each one of these can be used to your advantage, but if you're not careful, they can really hurt you. So maybe we talk about some of our favorites and then maybe consequences to avoid. But a lot of these I didn't even know about until I was in the business game for several years. So first off, you got friends and family, right?
100%.
Super important. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't come from like wealthy friends or family. You don't necessarily have to. You can put together, even with $500 or $1,000, smaller donations. Liquid Death, the founder of Liquid Death, he actually bootstrapped his first friends and family funding round. He said that 80% of the donations were under $1,000, and by donate, it was investment. He basically patchwork quilted his way to his first investment. He's like, I didn't have rich people that I knew, but I knew people who were willing to give me $500 or $1,000 because they believed in me.
And then later on in his career, I'm pretty sure he learned, or anybody can learn, that you can take the small investment and do an asset-based leverage loan on it.
What is an asset-based leverage loan?
Means like you deposit the funds into an account and you tell the bank, hey, I have this much money. How much money can I borrow based off this money? Or based off this asset, or based off my stocks, based off my mutual funds, whatever.
This is level 2, and this is where it starts to get so crazy. Okay, this is exciting to me. So then after friends and family, credit cards, specifically those 0% down interest rates.
And it has to be business credit cards because it can't be a personal, because then it's going to hit you on your personal account.
Yes.
And then you're F on your credit report.
But it's super nice to have a business card. I mean, I didn't know that. But yeah, if you have a business card and something goes south and you can't pay it, it doesn't reflect on your personal
Red flags.
credit.
Do not use Capital One, because those business credit cards will be reflected on your personal returns. Personal credit.
Okay, and something that you and I have talked about is that I also didn't know, if you can get credit cards that are connected to established banks, because then if you have a, like Chase, for example, if you get a Chase credit card, Chase is also a bank. Chase also provides business loans. So down the road, if you have a great credit history, you've been working with Chase for a while, the likelihood that they're going to give you a business loan is so much higher because you've established that relationship.
And if it's hard for you to get a business loan, I would say this, Emma, too. You could turn that credit card and open a line of credit, which is easier to get than a business loan sometimes with Chase, or even smaller branches.
Oh, okay. What would your starting point be? Would it be if you start with credit cards, like, because there's traditional business loans, lines of credit?
If your company's less than 2 years old, you're gonna fall in the startup category, and it's hard to get a business loan in the startup category.
Yes.
You have to prove to so many different people you know what the heck you're doing, and your projections are correct.
And most of the time, even if you have the best projections, you know what you're doing, they need to see 2 years of transaction history in order to give you a loan, which is so frustrating. So you're kind of left in that creative financing category, which is what we're talking about.
So for me, the way I would start is friends and family at first, right? Let me see if I can raise enough capital just to get the product up the ground. Right after that, I'm going to go straight for credit cards. I love credit cards. I've been using the credit card game for a hot minute. And then if I can't, depending on how much money I need, I go into my assets. I go into like my properties. I start looking at my stocks. I can do some leverage loans based off that and kind of start playing the game.
So before we dive into that a little bit more, I want to go through some of the other options, because a lot of this is how much money do you need to raise and what is your risk tolerance associated with that, right?
And if you're comfortable.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's my go-to method if I'm trying to raise less than like $250,000. If I'm trying to go more than $250,000, a whole different ballpark.
And since I have a much different risk tolerance than you, my comfort level looks a little bit different. So I agree about friends and family. Angel investors is also a really good one. So even if you look around at your friends and family and you're tapped out. And when we say friends and family, I'm talking friends of friends of friends. Use those tertiary connections. But there are also communities of angel investors people who have already made it, and they are very interested. And those loans can be small. They can be, go up to a large scale. But the cool thing about angel investors is they're invested in you as an individual because it's such an early stage, and they know they may not get their money back. So venture capital firms are also another option. Bootstrapping is a personal favorite of mine when you're starting out, when you're doing small scale, but it becomes very difficult if you want to scale faster. So that's basically where you are selling, you're getting started and you're funding it as you go along. And
Which
then
is honestly a little hard sometimes.
it is so hard because sometimes you absolutely need to hire staff or to order supplies, or you hit this bottleneck and you can't get to that next point if you don't have the cash.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's crowdsourcing, which has really come a long way in the past 5 to 10 years. There are GoFundMe's, there are resources.
Not even GoFundMe. Like, people build communities, and they'll compete with those communities. Just want to see you succeed. They literally would just invest in your product just to say, hey, I was part of that initial startup phase of that product. The final version of the product might be different than the version I invested in, but people want to see people succeed in life.
That's such a good point. So especially if you have something that people are getting excited about or is different or new, it's such a good opportunity to try it out. There's such a low barrier to entry. You basically showcase your idea and see if it's something that people will get behind. Then there's also government grants in a lot of different industries that, energy or technology or healthcare, there are government grants available that can really tremendously help with the cost of getting started.
So I applied for 2 government grants. That process was actually kind of easier than I expected, and you don't need to be a rocket science. If you can go to a Chamber of Commerce, they actually have people there that help you write the grant.
And then if not Chamber of Commerce, small business associations of individual states, they also have resources, and they usually have a team that will help you work your way through grants. Because at the end of the day, it's in the government's best interest for that money to be used and then
to be reinvested back in the community.
Exactly. And finally, peer-to-peer lending. Tell me what it is. Describe it to me, because I'm still not super familiar with it.
At the base level, peer-to-peer lending is like, I know this individual, you know me. Let's create a contract so I can borrow some money. I'm going to either pay you back with an equity or I pay you back with interest. And that's like the most basic form of peer-to-peer lending. There's actually platforms that connect different investors with different entrepreneurs, and then they broker those peer-to-peer lending contracts. Or you can go through a lawyer and get a promissory note that you're going to pay this person back through this entity.
So it's similar to angel investing.
It's honestly similar. Just angel investing, I would say there's more of a I'm okay if I lose the funds because I'm buying in you as an individual. Peer-to-peer lending is like, no, I'm investing for a return, either monetary return or equity return.
There are a lot of options to fundraise for your venture,
100%.
but some of them really scare me. So can we talk about the consequences of some of these options, as enticing as they might sound?
Yeah, of course. I think at the end of the day, it falls within your comfort level. I think depending on your comfort level, you will know which option is right for you.
Yeah, but some of these have higher consequences than others.
Correct. So, for example, peer-to-peer lending can be great because you can get a lot of money fast, easily by just talking to a straight-up individual or a platform without like a lot of credit checks and a lot of like business plans and stuff like that. The con of that is those terms of those loans can be kind of like rough. Like, you're giving up a lot of equity, or those interest rates you're paying a little bit way higher than market value. So you have to be really adjust and be comfortable with the loan you take on. Same thing with credit cards. Credit cards can be great, Emma, but if you're not ahead of the curve with credit cards,
you can drown so quickly.
Exactly.
I'm a testament. Sometimes you really need to use credit cards and you think you're good, and then a few months go by and you could be a couple $100,000 in debt.
mm-hmm.
And when we talk about playing the game, it is all about minimizing the interest that you pay, because that interest when it hits is so heavy with credit cards.
Exactly. The way I look at interest is like, okay, if I take a 0% interest credit card and I put, let's say, $100,000, and typically that interest is, let's say, 23% for easy math, right? That extra $230 I'm getting charged in interest. Where do I put that money towards? And if it makes sense to me, then yes, I'm going to put the money in the credit card.
What do you mean? Where do you put that money towards?
Where can it give me a better return?
Oh, so you're saying, yeah, so it's sort of the Dave Ramsey method. I give and take. I think some of the things he says are really good. And something that does make sense is you kind of go through what has the most, what costs the most, and you attack that first. Yeah.
I think he goes for the smallest first, and then he attacks that first. But that being stated, it goes back to what's worth it for you. For example, if you're willing to put $100,000 on a credit card, but you know that $100,000 is going to go to advertising, and you know that advertising is going to give you X amount of returns, and you're going to make X amount of sales, then you should be good.
I think the key is this all goes back to having a plan. And not only having a plan, but adapting the plan. So what I've learned to do is every 90 days, I'm making, not only am I checking in every month, but really and truly I have goals set for 90 days because a lot can happen in 6 months or a year. But 90 days, you can make a pivot. If your sales aren't up, you have to make a change, and it has to be a big one because otherwise you'll fall behind, and that can get really scary. I'm curious though, I know for a fact that you have been involved in a business venture in which it had to close down and you had to let some people know they were not going to get their money back. And I want to know what that experience was like.
It was hard, honestly. It was a great idea.
Really bad timing.
Yeah, COVID. But I took it like a champ in a sense, like everybody that personally invested that I knew, there was part of my little network of investors. I made them whole again. I not from that company, but from my personal funds, I made them whole. I think it goes back to those long term relationships that you're trying to build with that network, right? Because in the moment in time, like you're in crisis and you try to call them up and you're like, hey, you actually didn't make me money back in this deal, or you didn't make me whole in this deal. You know what I'm saying?
What I think is cool is I know for a fact that some of the people that invested that, watched that business fail, they have since invested in you again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because you were so good to them and fostered that relationship. So
It is sometimes it's kind of hard to put it in perspective, but people would buy in, not into the business most of the time, like you were saying earlier, they're buying into you. Like today, I was calling up a couple friends, just moving some money around, and everybody kept telling me, "You got this. You figure it out." You know what I'm saying? People just start believing in you.
I saw this really, really, really powerful TikTok about the power of community and of asking for help, and how we have stopped. We've become more isolated, and more independent. But a downfall of that, we've stopped asking people for help. So there used to be the idea, like the suburban ideal of asking your neighbor for sugar, right? Oh, I don't have sugar to bake my cake, or I don't have apples to bake my pie. Let me go ask my neighbor, and they'll be like, yeah, here, have some sugar. Here, have some apples. And that act of asking gets you more comfortable with the fear of rejection. And I know that there have been also people online who do those rejection therapy things where they try to go and just ask for as much stuff as possible, and they ask people for things because they want to get accustomed to being okay to be told no. And the reality is we are so much more often told yes, and that rejection stings for like a moment, and then you pick up and move on. That's fine. Nothing has really changed. But if you don't take in that power into your hands to just ask, mean, there's so much and you've taught me that, because everything you do is the art of the deal and the art of negotiation. And so much can be accomplished by just saying, why not?
Exactly. And then also too, I think as an entrepreneur, your main objective is to get as many people to say yes to you, but at the same time, for every yes, you're probably gonna have like 4 or 5 no's, and then how to learn from those no's and those pivots. Also, you're gonna make massive mistakes in your career. Like you fumble the ball really bad, and the objective is like, okay, how to pick myself up? Who do I call? Who's my support network? Like me and you, like you're my support network. I come to you, and then you usually stronger when I'm down, right? And you pick me up. Those environments really makes the business succeed. Not from the financial point of view, because sometimes it's gonna get tough, but just from an operational point of view too. Having that network of investors, having a network of like your community, is the way you can succeed in today's society.
Okay, so yes, there are so many ways that we can finance our venture, but I want to know specifically what you're going to do to raise money for the special product we're launching.
Yeah, I got the secret hack.
Okay.
I found the hack for an unlimited amount of money to fund this company.
I'm concerned. That sounds like a scam, and it sounds like you're going to get...
No, it's actually genius, and you gave me the idea without even thinking about it in a conversation.
I am a genius, so I'm ready to hear it.
Okay, think about this, right? We have $10,000 to start up the company, but that doesn't give us money to actually continue the operation of the company.
Okay.
But you said in passing, we can also do some pre-sales. Let's look into pre-sales. In my mind went, bingo, that's it. We take the limited supply we have of I think we're going to manufacture around 50 to 100 products, pre-sell them before we actually continue scaling up. We get the money up front, right? We manufacture the products, we ship the products out.
And then you don't have to spend money on product and on inventory, but you can essentially fund that next phase of your business completely with pre-sales.
On top of that too, it gives me more fun of the $10,000 to continue experimenting and refining the formula.
This This is brilliant. Okay.
And it's all thanks to you in a passing conversation.
So here's my question. How are you going to do the pre-sales?
I haven't got that part yet, but here's what I got so far, right? We set up a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Shopify store. We take some beautiful, beautiful photography of empty cans because we're not going to have like the formula in the cans just yet. Come up with some really creative materials like videos, maybe do a couple of test products.
I have an idea.
Tell me.
Okay, so this was something based off of what you said. So I think pre-sales, you can have it in a few different ways. You can go talk to local barbershops, right, that are going to be testing your products.
We already have one or two.
And I know. And then once they test your products, get their reviews and get them to start pre-selling their customers. Kind of like soft selling, letting them know this is going to be dropping, blah, blah, blah. Maybe even have an affiliate code or an affiliate link for the barbershop so they have an incentive.
We can sponsor, so Brokey can sponsor barbershop, like Andis sponsors barbers for clippers. We can sponsor barbers with their products, and they become ambassador of the brand. You're a genius, Jackson.
And then that's the in-person approach. But then for an online approach, when you're pre-selling like the e-commerce product,
that's actually a really good idea.
It is a good idea. No, I'm serious. Okay, but think about this. If we...
Casey, please write that down before we forget.
Why don't we take this approach of it's not just a hair care product. We're launching a product with $10,000 just because we wanted to see if we could do it. And that's the campaign. Like we actually are just super transparent with people and say, hey, we're doing this to document that it's possible to launch, create, and sell a successful product. And you should support us and support us by buying this product.
I love it. I love their transparency.
Yeah. So I mean, in all honesty, that's such an interesting, you're like, at this point, would you call that bootstrapping pre-sales, I guess?
I think so. But I think it's more of like a calculated, really, really calculated approach to it.
And you've already invested the funds. Like you have your funds set aside for what it's going to...
We technically did a peer-to-peer loan,
okay.
Right? So Classic Cuts Barbershop is lending the money to the new brokerage company that we're starting up.
What's the deal? What does Classic Cuts get out of it?
That hasn't been finalized yet, but they will get something back in return. We haven't figured that part out yet.
This is the benefit of when you own one business. In all honesty, no, having multiple business entities... This is the magic happens. You can lend money from one business entity to another one. You can structure the deal however you see fit within legal range.
And market value.
And market value. But that gives you so much more freedom and flexibility to finance your ventures and finance your ideas.
Exactly.
I am super excited about this.
I want to start working on this right now.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, bye.